Hello there, this is Founder Leroon with Fantasy Grounds College. I am going to do a video about the coding effects that can be achieved or purchased or even created by yourself, depending on what your expectations are and what your experience level is. The automation is something that isn't always included in a rule set. Quite often, a community builds it, or it might be included later on. It just depends on the rule set and how often it's used. A lot of the functionality in different rule sets differs. Today, we're talking about the DnD5e Ruleset. There are similar things that are in Pathfinder and other rule sets, but we're going to focus on this one for now, which is the DnD5e Ruleset in Fantasy Grounds Unity. Up on the screen, I have a character sheet. It's already built. The character sheet is on the combat tracker. The importance of that is to check your effects and see if they're working. And this also applies to NPCs. So if you're doing any kind of coding and you want to check it, make sure that the player or the NPC is on the combat tracker. Because sometimes it won't do anything or it won't change. And if you make a lot of changes to the character sheet, you should probably remove it and then re-add it, because some of the changes may not have carried over. This effects window is the condition and effects module. So if I go into my library, I have some Twohy coding effects modules. Now, mind you, there are other coding effects modules, and then people have their own custom ones. These are off the DM's Guild. Grim Press also has a variation of these. I'm not very sure how those work. I've never used them, although I do own them. But I'm not sure how they work, so I can't really speak on them. But these are the different modules that I have loaded. So this is the coding for 5e conditions and effects. So this would work really well, mostly with NPCs, but you can also apply them to characters that don't have a lot of coding or automation on their sheet. So you can see Rob's added exhaustion and all kinds of things. So these are some of the things that might be incomplete on a character NPC entry. A lot of those are just generic. They don't have a lot of this stuff on it. So if you find something like that and you're trying to play an NPC closer to a character, this module called 5e Coding and Effects is probably one of the most value added things that Rob's built as far as I'm concerned. Because honestly, most of this would apply to characters too. But if you want the automation for the character sheets, it's easier and better to use the spell effects, which are really just coding effects that Rob made. And he stored them in the spells area because that's where they just happen to resign, or where they set. So this 5e effects coding is 4 modules. You have class features, you have feats, you have race traits, you have spells. These are different groups. And these correspond to the modules here on the left. I also have a lot of the core modules loaded for character creation because I was actually building a character. So what I'm going to do is just kind of show you a few things. So when you go to the DM's Guild, you're going to be faced with, do you want to purchase these, or do you want to learn how to do it yourself, or maybe a little of both? I would really honestly get the conditions and effects. That's the first one I would get. And then if you can't afford the whole bundle, you can get each of these individual. The bundle price is a little bit better, so if you want to go that route, I mean, you're saving like anywhere from $1 to $4, depending on what it is. So these are on the DM's Guild. The description for these will be in the link for the actual archive videos. But then these are also based off the effects coding wiki guide. So if you want to learn how to do this yourself, there is an effects coding wiki, and it has a lot of these information that for the code words and the things that you're going to use. So that's just something you want to make sure that you get used to, and that you're going to learn, what's what. So I want to kind of go through a little bit of that, and then I want to see if you are going to care for this type of topic, or if it's too much, or it's over your head, or maybe there's some kind of thing that is bothering you, and you're wondering about it. So a lot of people ask, why isn't this stuff already part of the rule set? Well, there's various reasons for that, but typically it's development issues where they may not have the time to input all those little things. The other thing could be maybe it can't be done in some cases. Or maybe it wasn't thought of at the time and maybe someone else thought of it. So there's all kinds of reasons for it, but the main thing is that, Fantasy Grounds is not 100% automated, but it is close with the 5th edition rule set, and not everything can be automated. Let's get that clear. So you cannot automate every little single thing, and then you're kind of getting into video game land. So you kind of have to run Fantasy Grounds the way you want, and you have to decide how much automation is necessary. And if it's slowing you down, it's really not any, it's probably not any good. But if it's doing the math for you and kind of doing the little things in the background that you often forget, then that's when these become more usable for you as a gamer, as a player, or as a game master. So I have a 3rd level half-elf rogue. Her name is Glendiel the Jaded. She has a level 3 character is what this is. She's a spy. She's a half-elf. She has dark vision. And she's fully built. So she has all her skills, all her stuff's listed on here. Now, when you come to your class features on the character sheet, quite often you'll see all these things on here. So this criminal contact thing is basically more of a roleplay thing, and that's for you and your game master to go over and decide, how that's going to work out in your campaign, or even if it ever even comes up. Cunning action is pretty much a bonus action that you can take on your turn as being a rogue, so we'll have to see what we can do with that. I think that's an actual effect. And what you have to do is get rid of and get used to what things are automated or what can be automated and which things cannot. And that takes time. There's no master list that tells you, oh, this can be done, this can't be done. But if you've got Rob Twohy's coding effects, he's done 99% of the things that can be done. So that's something you want to keep in mind when you are building characters. And also, the automation is not everything. You can still do things, with just manual dice rolls. Not everything has to be automated. I used to go into this thinking that, everything's going to be automated. Well, if you're at 85%, you're doing good. So, don't worry too much about the automation, but if you are going to delve into it, I suggest that you try to learn about the rule set and the character sheets before you start diving into that. And that's a really good tip. And that's also very helpful so that you don't smash your head against a wall in frustration. So this is just something that I'm showing you that can be done, but it is not required. So the Thieves' Cant is just basically saying that this rogue gets a special language that they can dialect. So that's more of a roleplay thing. Survivalist. So this gives you, at 3rd level, you get proficiency in nature and survival, which we already have. And if we don't already have it, and then when you go to the skills, it says your proficiency bonus is doubled for any ability checks you make that uses either of these proficiencies. So the easiest way to do that is to go to, let's see, nature, and then just change this to double star, which will be double proficient. And then the other one is survival. So same thing, make it a double star. And that comes from your background and such, and the type of rogue that you are. So that's easily handled. That's not a coding thing. That's just changing your character sheet. So that's already dealt with. So we don't have to worry about that. Thieves' Cant is something that you have to add manually as the game master if you want to make that language available. And the criminal contact is a background kind of a roleplay thing. So then you go back to your abilities, and you have Deadly Aim, which comes from Tasha's. So usually this is for drow or some kind of special occasion, but as a bonus action, you give yourself advantage on your next attack roll, and you can, you basically get a bonus here. So this is optional, so you don't have to worry about that unless you're going to use it. Sneak attack is often something that people like to automate, and they always ask about. So we'll put that over here on the dues thing, or on the let's check it out thing. And then there's another one called Skirmisher. So you have difficult, you're hard to pin down. You can move up to half your speed as a reaction. So this isn't automated, but this is something you have to remember. And you can put this on your character as a note, and not really a actual effect, but it's a note that you can put on your sheet. The next thing is expertise. We already have that, but at first level, you can choose 2 of your proficiencies or 1 of your skills and Thieves Tools. So I got Thieves Tools as one of my skills. So this is something that you would just manually change on your sheet. So I am proficient in stealth, and I have basic expertise, and then I get to pick for Thieves Tools expertise. So that's double the amount of your proficiency bonus. So that's basically so this rogue has a lot of skills for just a rogue. They typically do, but bards have even more. But anyway, so expertise is dealt with. So I don't have to worry about that. So the next thing is your Roguish Archetype, which basically just says, just kind of defines what that is. And it's more of a guide or something that you would look at for reference. Cunning action, we already got that up here, and your criminal contact. So now you go down to your racial traits. There really isn't a really good way to automate this. It's advantage on saving throws against charmed, and magic can't put you to sleep. So this ends up being more of a note, but that is something you'd put on your sheet. And then you have all your weapon proficiencies and your languages. So it's usually your traits, your features, and if you have any feats, some of those can be automated. Your weapons are already pretty much dealt with. And then I have some things here that I've created by hand, manually, to kind of give you an idea of some of the stuff that can be done. So I'm going to go ahead and add these different traits here. And what some people have done is they've taken these and they add it to their character sheet by dragging it on here. The only problem is that it doesn't always code, or it doesn't always give you the correct information or the correct coding. But that's a good start. So if you don't even know what you're doing, you can drag these onto your sheet. But I recommend putting them in a different group. So I'm going to click Edit List, and then next to this Fey Ancestry, I'm just going to click Racial Traits. Once I click away or into a different cell, it's going to make its own category. And for all these things that are still there, I'm going to go ahead and right-click, and I'm going to go ahead and change this, because right now it says powers. So I'm going to call these consumables. What you do is you actually click the edit button on the very bottom right corner, and you click either add power or add weapon. So in this case, I click the star, and that gives you your new group. And now I'm just going to copy and paste this on all these different entries here, because these are all going to be in the same group. So now it changes the name to the group that you assigned it to. So we have this racial trait here, this Fey Ancestry. But as you can see, it's not quite filled out the way it should be. And this will be something that you'll learn after time. So the equivalent to this, or the actual correct or notated way to do it, is stored in the spells area. So if you have the racial traits spell module loaded, the Twohy coding effects, you will highlight this, and then you will come down here, and if it is a race trait, you want to make sure you select that. And then you go to elf, and then half elf, probably, because it is a half elf. And then you have half elf Fey Ancestry right here. So you grab and drag and drop that into the proper group. So I'm just going to drag and drop it here. So this has a little bit of duplication. However, it is broken up, and it's a little bit more complex here, and there's a lot more notation there. So I'm going to get rid of this initial one, and I'm going to leave this one. This one's coded a little bit better. And it really doesn't do a lot of things mechanically, but it does add a note to your character. So if I am playing and I am a player, I'm going to first get out of the edit mode that's down on the bottom right. I'm going to change this to combat and the display as actions, because this is basically your actions tab. Now I'm going to go ahead and click on that. That's going to add this notation up here. And then the second one is another one for advantage and that sort of thing. So that you can add these to your character sheet if they're on your sheet, and you can add them yourself. And basically it helps your game master and you when you're playing. So that's something that you would definitely want to get used to if you buy the coding effects, or if you make your own, is kind of having your own groups and then dragging and dropping them onto your list here, and then making them available for your gameplay. So I can put an effect on the candle and on the healing potion and for the oil flasks, which are basically my lantern. And then you can keep track of your water skin and such. So you do that by clicking on preparation, and you change the mode to summary or group. And you can change how often or if it does replenish, and then your quantity. And that's how you get these actions to look like bubbles on the left-hand side. So these are something that this stuff is a little bit more intermediate. If you're brand new to Fantasy Grounds, this information may kind of go over your head, or it might be a little over the top. I'm not saying you can't figure it out, but it may be a little frustrating if you're not sure what's going on. But I just wanted to let you know ahead of time that it's not really something you have to worry about in the beginning. So that's one group here. And if you had any spells, you could select that from this class feature list, or from the spell list in this case. So I want to go to class features. Now there is a group of actions that are really not class features, but they should be on every character sheet. So I'm going to make a new group, and I'm going to call it standard actions. So I click on the star. That makes a new power group. Powers just happens to be the basic name of the header until you change it. And to change it, you're going to put on the right-hand side, you're going to type in the category. So I'm going to say standard actions. So standard actions is what I'm going to name this. And all that is a placeholder. And at this time, I'm going to drag all these effects that are standard actions into this group. And these are just things to help you keep track of things. Some of these have coding on it, some of them don't, and you got to get used to that. There's no manual that tells you what's coded already and what isn't. You just have to really get used to the interface and the rule set and what you can do and what you can't do. There's no list or any kind of documentation that says, oh, this is what you have to do, and there's none of that. A lot of this is all customized, so you're not going to be able to hit an easy button and just say, oh yeah, everything's there. You got to do a little work, some due diligence, and some research. So now the next thing is I'm going to grab the specific things that go with this class. So we already dealt with Fey Ancestry, so I can close that. So the next thing is I'm going to add a group. So I click Edit, and I'm going to hit Add Power, and I'm going to call this Class Features. Now what we're going to do is add the features that are on your actual abilities tab. So your features here, you only add the ones that you find on this list. And if they're not on there, more than likely they cannot be automated, or they're role-playing type stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and drag and drop all the rogue stuff that applies. So cunning actions, sneak attack, skirmisher. So let's go to rogue, which is probably couple pages over because it's in alphabetical order. So here's all the rogue stuff. So you only drag over the ones that apply to your level and your background in your class and such, you don't drag them all over. Only the ones that are pertaining to your level, your archetype, that sort of thing. So we want to go for sneak attack. So you drag and drop that up there. So we got that taken care of. Skirmisher. And then cunning action. So cunning action really doesn't need to be loaded on here, but let me make sure it isn't. Yeah, but we can drag that over just as a informational type thing, but it's really not a, see, it didn't even go in that area, so it's really not a power, but it has the notes. And now what we're going to do is right click and get rid of this placeholder. We don't need it anymore. And those are the class features that I added for this particular rogue. A lot of people just drag everything over. You only drag over what you have for your level and what's listed on these features or your class traits. You don't drag them all over. The next thing is I'm going to add to have basically the right amount of things. Maybe we need to adjust some things. So like by default, the rogue is at first level, they're going to be 1d6. At level 3, that changes to 2d6. So I need to go in and edit it with this magnifying glass. And that adds it 2d6. So what will happen is when you're playing and you want to use this feature, you'll come down here and you will basically drag and drop this to your character before you roll your damage roll. And this is what I mean, like you have to learn how these things interface with the rule set and with the actual user interface. So you're going to have to get used to how do the character sheets work, when do you apply them, where do you apply them, why you apply them. Those things take time to learn. You're not going to learn those overnight. It's going to take a little while to digest that. But you don't really even have to do all this stuff, to be honest. This is just showing you what can be done, not necessarily what has to be done. So again, these are the Rob Twohy coding effects packages. They will be listed in the description of the video at the end. And one of the things that I wanted to show you was the candle. So if you go to the effects up here in the top right, it looks like the little running man, or it might be a different symbol depending on your theme. I think it's a wand in other cases. So when you drag candle over, it will add the lighting that you need. So I've already dragged those over just for an example. But if you want to add it to your character sheet as an effect, you can. So first of all, I'm going to do the potion. So right now it's just a listing. But if I right click on it, click on the arrow add action, and then click on the add heal, now what I'm going to do is pick up a four-sided, right click, and then I can drop that in the healing properties of the actual healing. So you open up the properties of this magnifying glass, pick up the dice, right click, drop, and then we're going to add 2. And how I knew what to do with that is the description of the potion tells you this potion is 2d4 plus 2. So that's how that's done. Now you actually have a potion that has functionality. So when you go to combat and actions, you can drag this to your character if they're damaged or one of your allies, and it will heal you. Now for the candle, if you want to add a light to it, you just right click on it, add action. You can add an effect, and then you're going to edit the effect with this magnifying glass over to the right. And we're going to call this candle, I guess. And then over to the right, we have a semicolon. And then we're going to type light, which is L-I-G-H-T. And it has to be capital. With a colon. Candle 5. And then more than likely, you can put it on self, but just leave it on targets. And then you're going to put the duration in rounds. You cannot do it in hours or anything like that because it doesn't display properly. You have to do it in rounds. So that's 600 rounds for a candle. And once you do that, you can actually add this effect to your character sheet from your character sheet instead of dragging it from up over here, which is another way to do it. This is the quick way to do it. But if you want to add this light and make it a little bit easier and quicker for you, plus you can manage it easier. So what I want to do is go to Combat and Actions. And then if you were going to use a candle, I would click on one of the bubbles. And then I would click on the coding itself, and it would put that up there on the sheet. So if you go to your, go up here, and you go to the options, or excuse me, these things here, the FX, you drag and drop that, and it's light 5 candle. And you can see I put that in backwards. I said light candle 5, so that's not going to work. The phrasing and the way that this stuff is set up, it needs to be exactly correct. Otherwise, it's not going to work. So I'm going to double click and get rid of that. I'm going to go back into the candle, and I'm going to switch that around. So 5 is the radius. It's in lowercase, and I'm going to go ahead and close this. Now I want to drag this candle to my character because I don't have it on self, I have it on target, so I can drag this to a different target if I want. And it has the rounds in here already. So if I drag and drop this on the character, now I get the candle light, and that's how it should be written. So this is basically, you can do this once you understand all the keywords. I put the link to the wiki guide, so if you want to start learning all the coding and phrasing. And then I also put the link to the modules that I'm using here in this video. You're not going to learn this overnight. You really need to kind of get used to the keywords, what things are, what can and can't be done. Nope, I am not using Fantasy Grounds Mad Nomad Actions because I'm doing it manually, because those add them, basically those add them automatically. And that kind of helps you along a little bit, makes it faster. But I'm dragging and dropping these manually myself and making my own groups. Can you rename the actions or removing the word action and not break anything? I don't know about that. I don't think so, because they are basically an action. So if you remove the action, it is going to make things more difficult. You have to go back and retype it. So basically all I'm doing is going in, and if you want to learn how to use these things, just dissect the coding that you have. But the Nomad extension, which I'm trying not to use extension, the automatic action tab is an extension that will automatically add these based off of what you have loaded in your library and what your traits and your abilities for your class give you. So those are automatic. So if you have all Rob Twohy's coding effects and you have a lot of the books, and then you also have a lot of the other topics that could be added, such as, you know, some of the coding features, they'll automatically add to your sheet. But every once in a while you'll get duplication, and that's one thing I want to avoid. I didn't want to get into extensions. So I'm trying to stay away from using extensions because they can potentially break. So I think that is kind of a real rough overview of what you're getting with the product. So you're getting if you get the coding effects for conditions and effects, this is what you're getting. You're getting this whole list of custom effects, and you can use these for NPCs and players if they're not coded right, or if they don't have any at all. And then you're getting the spell effects, which are not just spells, but you have there's 4 modules. You get the class features, which is all the class features, including all the new books, any feats that you might have, and then racial traits, and then you have spell effects coding. So that's basically all the different modules, plus if you get the conditions effect. So that's 5 modules. So if I'm in the library, I have these 5 books loaded, plus I have one extra one here, which is background class and equipment bundle. And what that does is it allows you to drag over all your background and class equipment in one motion instead of dragging each individual item. But if you use the character wizard, that may be a problem. So You may want to just save these for the end or whatever, but it's up to you how you want to do it. But I used the character wizard to build this character, probably 65% of it, and then the rest I just went ahead and did automatically or custom. So those are the older ways of dragging and dropping content on there. But this is basically what you're getting. So when you get a Twohy coding effects module, you get 4 modules in the bundle. You can buy them separately if you want. And then you also are getting the conditions effects. That's a separate module, and it's not included in the bundle. But if you get that, that'll be good for NPCs and such. So you want to get used to the interface, get used to how to build characters and such, get used to the rule set, and then start looking into these actions, because they can be a little tricky. They can be annoying. You got to know when to use them and such. So that sort of stuff is like intermediate and higher level stuff. So if you're brand new to Fantasy Grounds, don't get too wrapped up in this. It's something that takes a little time. So don't get upset if you can't figure it out in one day. So that's basically what I'm going to show. Again, if I go to the images and let's see, you basically are getting the Twohy coding effects, and like I said, Grim Press also puts out something similar. I'm not really sure what they do and how they work, but they're kind of similar to these. So you have an option, and I put the links in the video. So if you're not sure what I'm talking about, you can go to the video links at the end of the video and take a look and see where this takes you. But then again, you can also learn to make these yourself. So if you don't want to go out and buy anything, you can always do this yourself and learn to code. And it's really not hard. It's just keywords and learning what does what. It just takes a while to digest that. That's basically it. This is the DnD5e basically rule set. There are free coding out there for Pathfinder and such. So if you're a Pathfinder user, you can go to the actual website, the main Fantasy Grounds official website, and download any type of free community-made coding and add it to your game and get similar automation. It's going to be different, obviously, because they're different rule sets. But there are coding effects for other rule sets. They're just you're not able to sell them and market them the same way. So anyways, I think that's all I'm going to do for now. That's a good half an hour show. I don't want to go too far into it. But basically, you load the modules in your modules folder. You load them in your library. And then you use the filter in the spells area to break down what you're getting into. So if you do your class features first, and then you do your feats if you have any, and then your racial traits, and then if you're a spellcaster, you'd use the spells from here as opposed to the player's handbook. So it's up to you, though, how you want to do it. But then you would need to know, the character needs to be built first, and then you would need to know what level you are, what your background, what your archetype is, those sort of things. And those are the things you would drag over. And if it's not listed there, then more than likely it's not available. Or it's just a role-playing thing. So I think I'm going to call it a night. You guys have a good evening. Hope to see you around the community.